news.
Yes, Carsten, Sarge yellow card was okay. Kevin Brown was really good. But Mr. Watkins is a defensive liability. And did Jake Connor sign for the New Zealand Warriors already? Hashtag rocks and diamonds. Old favourite.
Always in our shadow said 80 minutes of hearing the commentators toss Kevin Brown off. FC no creativity from halfback. Carlos's worst game in black and white. Forward were unable to dominate. Quality try by Lane. Good performance from Beretta. And little else to talk about. Well, there's plenty there in that to start with, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm gonna do something quite rash for me. I'm gonna defend Kevin Brown. I thought he was all right.
He was all right. He was good.
He's someone who has recently last couple of games certainly. He's actually impressed, and I really don't. He's one of those players I have an irrational dislike of. I've never warmed to Kevin Brown. I don't know what it is about him, but I've never.
Neck.
Yeah, the just general Kevin Brownness of him, but I've never particularly thought he was that. I've always thought he's. I probably voted for him in the overrated player category about 5 or 6 times. So, but I'm sort of seeing something in the last few weeks that I haven't seen before or hadn't appreciated in the same way, and I think he is doing a steady away job.
No, we've seen it before. He had a really, really good spell at Widnes. That's why Widnes fans hate him so much for leaving and going to Warrington. Really, is because he was their side. He had very good time there. He had one good season with Huddersfield. I feel like the rest of the season, I feel like he contributed occasionally, kind of like what he's been like since leaving Widnes. But in this, he got 3 Man of Steel points, Inu 2 and Sargentson 1, and the Albert Goldthorpe guys at League Express gave the same. Brown 3, Inu 2, Sargentson 1. And the commentators were talking about him because he was very good. You can't take away from him that he was very good in this game, I don't feel. He controlled everything, he organised everything, and he, just like the game the week before against Catalans, he spotted what was on and took advantage of it with his side. So I'm on board with you on this one. Brown was good, and we shouldn't be critical when people are good just because we don't like them necessarily. The other talking point, I suppose that's come up there a bit, is Dan Sargentson's yellow card. So he's been given a grade B high tackle 2-match penalty notice, which will rule him out of the semi-final. Salford are appealing it. The appeal will be heard tomorrow as we record today, probably as you listen. But technically, because of the way it works, he's able to play in Tuesday's game, but not able to play in the semi-final. And it looks as though, which way, he's probably not going to get off altogether, is he? So he's going to...
No.
They wouldn't take this down to nothing, I don't feel, given that they've gone at a grade B. We'll get to read all the write-up at least because he's gone to appeal, which is interesting. We get to find out the ins and outs of what other people more in the system and understanding of these things make of it. But yeah, from my point of view, well, from everyone's point of view, no one had a consensus on this, it felt like. Barry almost felt like it was barely a penalty. And then... we had Sarah messaging saying definite red because it was a direct contact to the head, and she viewed it as forceful. I was like clear yellow, direct contact, but I don't think it was forceful, and there was a massive mitigation in the fact that the shawl was practically sat on the floor. So that's all the views there. And then
I'm probably in the sim bin sufficient category. I think it was worthy of action, but I don't think there necessarily needs to be any more from that.
Well, the disciplinary have come out and backed Sarah's take. They're giving it a grade B. Yeah. That's a strong stance on it, I think. I'm surprised. I don't think it was that as bad as that, but we'll wait till we read up and understand why they've come to that view. But yeah, it was a bit of a moment, weren't it? Thankfully, there was no real damage to Shaw. He went off for a check, but came back on and scored a try in the second half, didn't he? After he'd come back on. Scored a good try in the first half too, actually. To be fair,
I think it's also looking at a player as well. He was doing it out of enthusiasm, not out of malice. For me, Dan Sargentson is someone who when he's up and firing, he's quite enthusiastic and he goes for it. And he's not someone that necessarily someone that goes out to hurt people, which is why I think it's probably at the grade A insufficient sort of end of things. So a 1 match ban is probably right. It's probably justifiable, but I don't feel that that's necessarily more than that. But I'm probably clouded again by my view and my like of Dan Sargentson, the same way I was with Kevin Brown the other way. I probably, because I know
possibly so we're sat.
I know Sarge a bit. Yeah, that's probably a part of it. But there we go.
The rest of this game, one of the things I think is some of Salford's tries were I'm not going to say easy to score, although Joey Lussick's a little bit, but I'm not saying easy to score, but entirely preventable from Hull FC's point of view. You look at Christian Inu's tries where he just bumped people off him quite simply. 2 tries from the hookers. I know one was a bit of a nicely worked off an offload situation, and one was a classic dive over from Joey Lussick. But there was things in there that I felt Hull maybe could have stopped. I can't remember exactly which one of the tries it was now off the top of my head. It might have been, in fact, the Ackers try. But there was an offload in the middle of the pitch, and Shaw had missed the first tackle, and then just basically stood with his hands on his hips, even though he was only five yards away from the try line. So he could have covered the distance to try and make an attempt on the man who got the ball after the player who'd broke his tackle. And I just thought that's not the right attitude you want to see from one of your leading players. Now, he did make up for it in other ways in this game, but that summed up some of the things I think with Hull. There wasn't a true enthusiasm for each other in defence, the same way as you'd want to see from a club that want to be pushing for trophies. Although on the flip side, Jordan Lane's try was brilliant. Absolutely loved that steam train line that he ran.
Yeah, there wasn't anything that was going to stop him, was he? He was going, and you were going to have to put something in the way to really stop him.
I mean, and he was as surprised as anyone, I think, that he outpaced all of the backs once he'd made the break as well. He was like, I'm going to go again here. I'm fast enough. I can do this.
Yeah, I mean, what good work.
Right, let's move on to Castleford versus... Actually, no, one more thing just on that game, because I saw a lot of people blowing up over it on Twitter from Hull SV's perspective. And it was quite an important moment in the game, actually, because Hull had scored that lane try, they were looking strong, and they were closing in, and then they had a penalty for offside where it was a man inside the 10 on the kicker. The catcher at fullback from a kick. The ball had been knocked on, but the penalty was given because of the man inside the 10. And lots of Hull FC fans felt there wasn't a man inside the 10. Josh Bowden was clearly 3 or 4 yards in front of the kicker and ended up 3 or 4 yards away from the man catching the ball. And actually, if you follow the play on, he went in to make a tackle on the player who picked up the loose ball afterwards. So, that was a penalty under the rules. People need to maybe sometimes, and I'm as guilty as this as anyone else, check before they go blowing up about something like that one. But I am annoyed with that rule, and it came into play in the next game as well. So shall we talk about the next game?
Yeah, it was later on Thursday night. It was Castleford 19, Huddersfield 31, having been 13-12 to Cass at half-time. Liam Moore was the referee for this one. And in terms of team statistics, Cass hurt themselves with 6 more errors and 3.2 worse tackle success rate, under 90% overall. Huddersfield only made 5 handling errors and 3 more breaks to earn the 2-score win. For that winning Huddersfield team, Mikey Lawrence made 50 tackles, 11 from marker, and went both ways with 117 metres. Well done to him. Jeremy Gilvery was on the end of 3 tries, made 8 tackle busts, 162 metres, and 3 clean breaks. Jake Wardle, 1 try, a try assist, 8 tackle busts, and ran for 151 metres. 2 of those were clean breaks as well. And Kenny Edwards, the moral vacuum himself, picked up a try assist and ran for 112 metres. In terms of the losing Castleford side, Jesse Senna-Lefeo making 5 tackle busts, 166 metres, with 4 offloads. Mike McMeekan, 1 try assist, 8 tackle busts, 105 metres, 3 offloads. Greg Eden, 1 try, a try assist, and 109 metres with 2 clean breaks. And Claire James, 127 metres.
Just the one fan view on this one. David Hunter said, Aidan Caesar is the king. He was the difference in this one. I think there was some other strong performances. Not that Caesar wasn't pretty decent, but I don't think he was best on show. But it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt your assist stats when you get to throw one 3 yards forward and everyone just spends the time talking about being a beautiful pass. I mean, it was a beautiful pass if the field was twisted about 20 degrees. Taking nothing away from Jeremy Gilvery being there to finish it, of course. So right early on in this game, there was a kick that went up. Paul McShane was clearly offside, started to chase the kick, but then realised he was offside and pulled out of it. But the referee blew up for the penalty of him being inside the 10 because he still was inside the 10 by the time, he realised too late, basically.
Yeah.
And he had absolutely no influence on the play for me. And I was thinking, in a similar situation where, say, he was a late retreating marker and he tried to run away from the player who was catching the ball, or carrying the ball in that in that instance where he's a late retreating marker in the defensive line, say, the referee wouldn't blow for a penalty. He'd let play go on. It's like, why are we so stringent on the 10-metre rule for the kicks where players don't get involved in the play, or don't directly get involved in the play? Like, indirectly, players are always involved, I suppose, if they're roughly around the action. But we are so strict on it in that circumstance, but we're not when it's the 10 metres from the play of the ball. It just seems like maybe it's just too much for the referees to be on top of, like, making a judgment call on it or not. But it just feels like, do we want to see penalties given for something so innocuous?
And also, from a player's point of view, it's the hardest one to judge because you've got no idea what 10 metres is when you're on a field as an average. But, unless you've done a lot of refereeing, which 99.99% of players won't have had the time to do, then, to be honest, you've got no idea relatively in the heat of the moment what that is. And whereas other things, you're a bit more aware of your situation and your surroundings, like the marker example you gave. You're aware of that, so I would almost treat that more harshly than those ones.
It just feels like there's an inconsistency, and the inconsistency leads to, like, penalties, whereas we'd rather see a more open game with less penalties. Let's see what a kick returner can do. And let's not give a penalty. Let's not give a penalty when the catcher's knocked on because of a legitimate, like, chase, because of someone who's not really involved in the chase, who wasn't part of the circumstance. It feels over the top, an over the top punishment. But anyway, it's one for other people to look at. Jake Wardle, he's one for all of us to look at. He was brilliant in this game.
Yeah, what a game. Yeah, he did really well, and he looked good, and he just looked quite solid as well, which I think was good to see. He was helped by the players around him. I think Caesar got a lot of plaudits, but I think possibly slightly over. He got the classic Australian halfback, everybody loves him syndrome. We need a name for that. But he got a bit of that. But I think he had a good game, and big shout out and big props to Mike Lawrence for that stellar performance, making 50 tackles and running for 117 metres at the same time.
It's almost not impressive now he does it that often. No, I'm joking. It's clearly hugely impressive still. And McGilvery, 3 tries and no like half-arsedness in the rest of the work he had to do in the game as well, coming out of his own end, which is the stuff we're familiar to seeing from him. So I think there were some really strong performances for Huddersfield, and that meant they deserved to win the match, even though there was that touchdown in the first half. But for Castleford, there was a couple of sparks for Castleford as well in this game, mostly Greg Eden, and he talking of rocks and diamonds before, he is very rocks and diamonds.